In the early 1980s, Silicon Valley was booming. Palo Alto and Sunnyvale, California, were places full of promise, innovation, and everyday life for families and young people. But on a quiet September night in 1982, a terrible tragedy unfolded that would leave a community searching for answers for more than 4 decades. This is the story of Karen Stitt, a bright 15-year-old girl whose life was tragically cut short. Her case remained unsolved for nearly 43 years until advances in forensic science and the unwavering determination of one detective brought long-awaited answers and a measure of justice to her family and friends. Karen Ann Stitt was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but her family later moved, and by her teenage years, she had relocated to California to live with her father in Palo Alto. She was a student at Palo Alto High School, known for her kind heart, bright smile, and outgoing personality. Friends and family described her as spunky, intelligent, and full of life. She loved spending time with friends, listening to music, and navigating the Bay Area's bus routes like a local. In the summer of 1982, Karen had settled into her new surroundings. She had a boyfriend who lived in nearby Sunnyvale, just a short bus ride away along El Camino Real. The two spent time together, sharing simple moments like hanging out, playing video games at local spots, and enjoying each other's company. On Thursday, September 2nd, 1982, Karen took the bus from Palo Alto to visit her boyfriend in Sunnyvale. It was an ordinary evening for them. They spent hours together chatting and relaxing. As the night grew late, around midnight, her boyfriend walked her to the bus stop on El Camino Real near Wolf Road so she could catch the ride back home. That was the last time anyone who knew her saw Karen alive. The next morning, September 3rd, 1982, a delivery driver making his early rounds discovered something heartbreaking near a business along the same route. Behind a low, cinder block wall partially concealed was Karen's body. Authorities were called immediately. The Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety responded quickly. Investigators secured the scene and began what would become one of the most thorough initial investigations the department had seen for a case like this. Evidence was carefully collected, witnesses were interviewed, and the area around the bus stop was canvassed for any possible leads. Karen's family and friends were devastated. Her father, her sister Suzanne, her aunt Robin Morris, and close friends like Tracy Lancaster and her boyfriend could hardly believe what had happened. Karen was only 15, full of dreams, just starting high school, and loved by so many. The news spread through Palo Alto High School and the surrounding communities, leaving everyone stunned and grieving. In those early days, detectives worked around the clock. They spoke with everyone who might have information: people near the bus stop, passengers on late-night buses, local residents. Fingerprints were taken where possible, and biological evidence from the scene was preserved for future analysis. At the time, DNA technology was still in its infancy, barely used in criminal investigations, so investigators relied on traditional methods: witness statements, timelines, and physical clues. One person who came under early scrutiny was Karen's boyfriend. As the last person known to have seen her, it was standard procedure to look closely at him. He cooperated fully with investigators, providing details about their evening and the walk to the bus stop. Over the years, he would continue to maintain his innocence, and importantly, later forensic testing would fully clear him. But despite the hard work, no clear suspect emerged in those first weeks and months. The case generated significant media attention in the Bay Area, with newspapers and local TV stations covering the search for answers. Community members hoped for a quick resolution, but as time passed without major breakthroughs, the investigation gradually slowed. By the mid-1980s, the case had become what law enforcement calls a cold case. Active leads had dried up and resources shifted to newer incidents. Karen's file remained open, stored carefully in the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety's records, a reminder of an unsolved tragedy. For Karen's loved ones, the pain never faded. Her ashes were later spread by her sister over Mount Tamalpais in Mill Valley, a beautiful spot that perhaps brought some small comfort. Family members and friends held onto memories of her laughter, her kindness, and the bright future she should have had. They often wondered if answers would ever come. Years turned into decades. Technology advanced dramatically. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, DNA testing became a powerful tool in criminal justice. In 2000, investigators re-examined evidence from Karen's case using the new DNA methods available at the time. The results were significant. They definitively ruled out her boyfriend as the source of key biological evidence found at the scene. This was an important step. It cleared an innocent person and kept the door open for future progress. Still, no match was found in existing databases. The case stayed cold, but the evidence was preserved, waiting for the day when science could catch up. Decades passed after that heartbreaking morning in September 1982. For Karen Stitt's family, the pain of her sudden and tragic loss never truly faded. Her father carried the weight of grief every day, wondering what more could have been done. Her sister Suzanne kept memories alive, sharing stories of Karen's laughter and spirit with anyone who would listen. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and close friends like Tracy Lancaster held onto the photos and moments they had shared with the bright young girl who should have grown up to chase her dreams. The Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety never fully closed the file. Detectives over the years reviewed it periodically, hoping new tools or fresh eyes might reveal something overlooked. But without a match in the evolving DNA databases of the time and with no strong new leads, the case remained unsolved. It became one of those files that haunted the department, a reminder of a young life taken far too soon and a community still seeking answers. Meanwhile, the world of forensic science was changing rapidly. By the 2000s, investigative genetic genealogy had emerged as a groundbreaking method. This approach combined traditional DNA analysis with public genealogy databases, those used by people researching family trees. Upload a crime scene DNA profile anonymously and ethically, and it could connect to distant relatives in those databases. From there, investigators built family trees backward and forward to identify possible suspects. It wasn't magic. It was careful, patient detective work combined with cutting-edge science. This technology had already solved several high-profile cold cases across the United States, bringing closure to families who had waited decades. Departments like Sunnyvale's began exploring it more seriously, especially for cases where traditional methods had reached their limits. In 2017, a dedicated detective named Matt Hutchison joined the effort on Karen's case. Detective Hutchison had grown up in the Sunnyvale area and knew the streets where the tragedy occurred. He had long been drawn to cold cases, seeing them as opportunities to bring answers to families who had suffered in silence for so long. When he took on Karen Stitt's file, he approached it with determination and a promise to do everything possible to find the truth. For the first couple of years, Detective Hutchison reviewed every piece of evidence, reread reports, and looked for any overlooked detail. He collaborated with colleagues and consulted with forensic experts to ensure the preserved biological evidence from 1982 was still viable for modern testing. The department had become an early adopter of genetic genealogy techniques, and this case seemed like a strong candidate. Then, in early 2019, a crucial tip came in. An anonymous source provided information suggesting that the person responsible might be connected to one of four brothers from Fresno, California. Fresno is about 150 miles southeast of Sunnyvale, but in the 1980s, people moved around the state for work, family, or other reasons. The tip was specific enough to warrant serious follow-up. Detective Hutchison and his team began quietly investigating the four brothers. They looked into their backgrounds, residences in the early 1980s, any connections to the Bay Area, and whether any had been in or near Sunnyvale around September 1982. This phase required patience, building timelines, checking public records, and gathering information without alerting potential persons of interest. At the same time, the department moved forward with genetic genealogy. They worked with approved labs and consultants to upload a DNA profile from the evidence left at the scene. The profile was processed through public genealogy databases, with strict privacy protocols in place. The goal was to find genetic relatives who could help narrow down a family tree. This process isn't instant. It can take months or even longer to build accurate trees, rule out false leads, and confirm connections. Detective Hutchison and his partners documented every step carefully, knowing that any breakthrough would need to hold up in court. By late 2021 and into 2022, the pieces began coming together. The genetic genealogy research pointed toward a specific family line. Combined with the earlier tip about the Fresno brothers, investigators focused more closely on one individual, Gary Gene Ramirez. At that time, Ramirez was living in Makawao on the island of Maui, Hawaii. Records showed he had lived in California during the relevant period, including time in the Central Valley and possible ties to the Bay Area. To strengthen the case ethically and legally, the team needed confirmatory evidence. They obtained a discrete sample for comparison, often done through legal means like discarded items from public spaces. In this instance, a sample linked to a relative helped confirm the high probability match between the crime scene DNA and Ramirez's genetic profile. In late April 2022, the Santa Clara County Crime Lab officially confirmed the identification. The DNA evidence from the scene matched Gary Ramirez to a very high degree of certainty. This was the breakthrough the department and Karen's family had waited over 40 years for. With the match confirmed, planning for an arrest began immediately. It was a coordinated effort involving the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety, the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office, federal authorities, and law enforcement on Maui. The operation had to be careful and precise, given Ramirez's age, he was 75 at the time, and location out of state. On August 2, 2022, authorities arrested Gary Gene Ramirez at his home in Makawao, Maui. He was taken into custody without incident. News of the arrest spread quickly through the Bay Area media, bringing renewed attention to a case many thought might never be solved. For Karen's loved ones, the news was bittersweet. After more than 4 decades of uncertainty, there was finally a name and a face connected to the loss they had carried for so long. Yet the arrest also reopened old wounds, forcing them to relive the pain while seeking the justice Karen deserved. Detective Hutchison later reflected on the moment. It was about keeping a promise to do everything possible for victims and families who had waited so long. His work on this case and others earned him respect in the law enforcement community, with some affectionately calling him a badass detective for his relentless pursuit of truth. The arrest of Gary Gene Ramirez on August 2, 2022, marked a major turning point, but it was only the beginning of the legal journey. Bringing someone to justice across state lines and after more than 4 decades required careful coordination and patience from everyone involved. Ramirez, then 75 years old, was held in Maui while extradition proceedings moved forward. Authorities from Santa Clara County worked with Hawaiian law enforcement to ensure a smooth transfer. By late 2022, he was extradited to California and booked into the Santa Clara County Jail. He faced formal charges of first-degree murder, along with additional allegations related to the circumstances of the crime. From the start, the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office treated the case with the seriousness it deserved. Prosecutors reviewed the extensive evidence file, including the DNA match confirmed by the county crime lab in April 2022. The genetic genealogy work had been thorough and documented every step to withstand legal scrutiny. The biological evidence from the scene, preserved since 1982, remained the cornerstone of the case. For the next 2.5 years, the legal process unfolded slowly, as is common in complex cold cases. Defense attorneys filed motions, and both sides prepared for what could have been a lengthy trial. Ramirez maintained his right to a fair process, and the court system moved methodically. During this time, Detective Matt Hutchison and his colleagues continued their work behind the scenes. They reached out to potential witnesses, re-interviewed people from the 1980s where possible, and ensured all loose ends were tied. The Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety also supported Karen's family, keeping them updated on developments while respecting the ongoing legal constraints. Karen's loved ones, her father, sister Suzanne, Aunt Robin Morris, and close friends, waited with a mix of hope and heavy hearts. The arrest had given them a name after 40 years of questions, but true closure would only come when the case reached its conclusion in court. They attended hearings when they could, drawing strength from each other and from the knowledge that so many people had worked tirelessly on Karen's behalf. Then, in early 2025, a significant development occurred. On February 24, 2025, Gary Jean Ramirez appeared in Santa Clara County Superior Court and entered a plea of no contest to first-degree murder. In legal terms, a no-contest plea means the defendant does not admit guilt but agrees not to contest the charges, accepting the consequences as if convicted. As part of the agreement, the additional charges were dropped. This plea spared the family and the community from a full trial, which could have been emotionally draining after so many years. It also allowed the focus to shift toward sentencing and final closure. The sentencing hearing took place on May 12, 2025, before Judge Hanley Chu in the Santa Clara County Superior Court. By then, Ramirez was 78 years old. The courtroom was filled with supporters of Karen, including family members who had traveled to be there. They had the opportunity to deliver victim impact statements, powerful words that expressed the depth of their loss and the long road they had walked. Karen's sister Suzanne spoke movingly about the sister she had lost at such a young age. She described the emptiness that had lingered for decades, the milestones Karen never got to experience, and the relief that came with knowing the person responsible would face consequences. Other family members and friends shared similar sentiments, emphasizing how the case had affected their lives while expressing gratitude to Detective Hutchison, the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety, the District Attorney's Office, and the forensic teams who made the breakthrough possible. Judge Chu addressed the courtroom with gravity. He acknowledged the senseless nature of the crime and the profound impact it had on Karen's family and the community. Considering Ramirez's age and the plea agreement, the judge imposed the maximum sentence available under the circumstances, 25 years to life in state prison. Given Ramirez's advanced age, this effectively meant he would spend the remainder of his life in custody. For many, the sentence represented long-delayed justice. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability and honoring the memory of a young girl whose life had been taken far too soon. In the months following the sentencing, the story gained wider attention through national media. ABC News featured the case in their long-running series 2020 in a segment titled Badass Detective. The episode highlighted Detective Matt Hutchison's dedication, the power of investigative genetic genealogy, and the emotional journey of Karen's family. It aired in early 2026 and brought renewed awareness to how modern forensic tools can solve cases that once seemed impossible. The coverage also underscored a broader message. Cold cases are not forgotten. With persistence, scientific advances, and committed investigators, answers can still come, even after more than 4 decades. Karen Stitt's case has left a lasting legacy. It stands as one of the many examples of how genetic genealogy has transformed criminal justice in the United States. Since the technique became widely used in the late 2000s, hundreds of cold cases have been resolved, bringing peace to families who had almost given up hope. For the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety, the resolution reinforced their commitment to never closing the door on unsolved cases. Detective Hutchison, now recognized for his work on multiple cold cases, continues to inspire others in law enforcement to pursue truth no matter how much time has passed. And for Karen's family and friends, the end of the legal process brought a quiet sense of resolution. They could finally lay to rest some of the questions that had haunted them since 1982. While the pain of losing Karen would always remain, knowing that justice had been served provided a measure of comfort. Karen Ann Stitt was remembered not just for the tragedy that took her, but for the bright, kind, and lively young woman she was. Her story reminds us of the importance of cherishing every moment, supporting victims' families, and continuing to advance the tools that help bring answers to light. In the end, after more than 42 years, a heartbreaking chapter closed, not with fanfare, but with quiet dignity, science, and the unwavering dedication of those who refused to forget. Thank you for listening to the story of Karen Stitt. Cases like this show us the power of persistence and progress in seeking justice. If you're interested in learning more about cold case resolutions or forensic advancements, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to share more. If this video helped bring awareness to her memory or offered insight into how these cases are solved today, please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. Your support helps channels like this continue telling important stories. Respectfully, rest in peace, Karen. Your light continues to inspire.